Cheers, brother.
Cheers, brother. It's Wednesday, my dudes. Welcome to the Not Live, Just Noise Boys podcast. If you do that again, I will leave and you'll be doing this by yourself. Yeah, that's what day it is. Today's Wednesday. We be chilling. We have a big old episode to talk about today, but before we do that, how is everyone doing? Everyone being me and everyone else being you.
Dude, what an introduction. Wow, I really gotta hand it to you there.
Yeah, I'm really good.
No, I'm doing good. Today was actually a pretty good day. I got 2 new pieces of gear that I'm pretty stoked on. I got a new pedal from Eris Effects. Shout out to them. Shout out to Gary Singleton for hooking it up especially.
Yeah.
Got a new pedal from them, which is, always fun to play around with. And then I got these in-ear monitors, which I was going to use for this podcast, but my interface is too far away from my face for these to reach. So unfortunately not using these right now, but I'm excited to use them. Shout out to Empire Ears for sending those over as well. So yeah.
What does the pedal do?
So it's a boost pedal. So it's the same thing. It's almost the same thing as what I already have, which is called the Savage Boost, except with this one, it has no controls on it. So it's basically the boost that's always set to 50%, but then it also has a built-in noise gate. So it eliminates a lot of the noisiness that a boost pedal adds to your signal. So it just kind of gives you a cleaner boost, I guess you could say.
Is it a prototype?
Yeah, it's a prototype, so it has no logo or design or anything on it. It just looks like a concrete block with a red light on it, which is kind of cool in its own way. I don't know, whenever he ends up releasing this pedal, it's definitely not going to look like that. It's just kind of cool to have something rare like that.
Yeah, it's cool to have that for sure. It looks pretty cool, even though it's
yeah,
pretty sparingly, but
just a copper block.
Yeah,
that's pretty much it for me. I can't really think of much else. Maybe that's all I got. I think.
Yeah, that's cool, man. I don't really know if there's anything going on with me either. Not that I can think of off the top of my head necessarily. Just been chilling.
Yeah.
Finally got some merch that I ordered 3 months ago, but
nice.
Due to everything happening, shipping from the USA to Canada is an absolute nightmare. Apparently.
Yeah, it is.
So yeah. Oddly enough, it's merch that I ordered from the people that we're talking to today, which we'll talk about in a minute.
Ooh.
But yeah, that's kind of it, honestly. I've been playing Sonic Mania. That's been fun.
It's always hard to talk about this part of things, especially because we talk to each other every fucking day. So
yeah, but nobody else knows.
I know, but it's hard to think of things that we haven't already talked about because we've probably talked about them to each other anyways, and also I have
things within the depths of your mind.
Worst memory of all time, so things that happened yesterday are immediately gone from my brain when I wake up the next day.
It's true, your memory is terrible.
It's awful.
Yeah, your memory is really bad.
Well, I guess the only other thing I was going to say is the funny thing about these in-ear monitors is it makes me realize how deaf I am in my left ear, which is not cool, but I mean, it's there, and yeah, that's from standing stage. What would that be? Stage right on, stage when we play every show ever. That's usually the side I'm on. So my left ear is just getting absolutely fucking destroyed by our drummer, who hits the hardest of all time, and is just smashing a China cymbal into my eardrum the whole time.
Yeah, but the thing is, you cannot blame that on drummers, because when we play live, you have your earplugs in for probably about 5.3 seconds, and then they fall out, and you never put them back in.
Well, it's because what if they fall out, they're gone. There's no, they're gone. It's not like they fall on the stage and you can find them again. They're just gone.
Well, now your Empire fucking in-ear monitors are attached by cords. Exactly. And there you go. So now they're not going anywhere.
Yeah, fucking hopefully.
I mean, if you ever play live again, who knows,
that
right?
too. But no, I just, obviously it's my own fault just as much as, actually it's entirely my own fault, but I'm just saying it's funny that it's so much more noticeable in one ear than the other, and I assume that's why, because I don't see why else it would be so uneven. But
yeah, you got to take care of your ears as you get older, especially if you're mixing and
Yeah.
doing that. That separates a lot of producers from other people too.
Yeah, well, I definitely try to. It's more just they fall out usually, and I've never got good ones, so I just kept using the cheap, shitty ones, and then they fall out, and I'm like, well, I guess I'm just not wearing earplugs today, and here we go.
Right.
So, yeah. But anyways.
Well, before we get into a probably going to be very long podcast, we may even split it into two depending on how long our conversation is. We wanted to talk about something that once again bothers us. We just love to complain. I love to complain about shit. It's super fun.
This is like from Family Guy, like you know what grinds my gears? You remember that?
Yeah,
that's this section of the podcast.
So I'm gonna read what we have as the header for this this topic: the Spotify complex, perceptions of Spotify by people who don't know shit. Do you mind elaborating on what exactly that means?
Yeah, so I'm sure that everyone out there has seen stuff like this before where people really like to complain about streaming, but especially Spotify. For some reason, I don't really know even why it's specifically Spotify, because all streaming platforms are the same. I don't know why Spotify gets it more than others personally. But anyways, I digress. So it's basically, yeah, tons of people complain about Spotify, and I think that a lot of them don't know what they're talking about. And that's also perpetuated by artists who also don't know what they're talking about, because a lot of the artists that complain about Spotify and streaming services tend to be older artists who used to be around when like CD sales were a bigger thing, and also don't realize that their record deal still applies to their streaming numbers, and it's not like a whole separate thing. So they get this like, yeah, that's like the easiest way to explain it.
It's that and them not really understanding what the platform is, and what it can be utilized for. They just assume it's like a big bad bear that's taking everything away from artists and
a big bad
basically
bear.
Acting as a label, right?
Yeah. So as I said, like, I'm sure you guys have seen this before, or maybe you're one of the people that thinks Spotify is bad, which, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's fine to think that, I guess, but Johnny and I obviously do not agree with that at all.
No.
With that being said, I will put this out there, like, we are also coming from the perspective of musicians who primarily are, what would the word be? Like I don't know the word. Like sole owners, you know what I mean? Like we're not signed to a label. Everything we put out, we own completely. So there's that to preface this. Like, we're not like a touring band who's had a label or something like that. So again, slight difference in experience based on that, I'm sure. And also, we're both solo artists or at most 50-50 partners. So we're also not splitting our revenue like 5 or 6 ways. But with all that being said, out of the way, Johnny and I both absolutely love Spotify. I have zero complaints about it, and I think it's fucking fantastic. And also all other streaming platforms as well. Again, we're just using Spotify as like the scapegoat in this situation. But yeah, I think they're all great personally. And they have made me a lot of money, and I'm very okay with that.
Yeah, the primary argument for a lot of people when it comes to this topic is that Spotify doesn't pay their artists appropriately.
Yeah, that's definitely the biggest argument against it that I see as well.
Yeah, that's a huge thing. But, I mean, what are you going to do? Just not put your music on Spotify?
That's like, what some artists have tried to do, though. Like, Tool did that forever. And eventually, just like every other artist who's tried not putting it on Spotify, they eventually fold and put it up anyways because
people ask for it.
It makes no sense. Like, you're purposely not giving a huge portion of your audience the stuff they want to hear. Like, how is that benefiting anyone? Like, people that use Spotify are not going to see that one artist they like doesn't use it and be like, oh, well, I guess I better ditch the whole Like, no, that's never going to fucking happen. Like, that's not the way people's brains work.
Yeah, but it's like, even like, Tool is obviously with a label, probably Warner, a very large label, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
It's not as though Tool will not see any of that money. And when Tool dropped their stuff, like we're using them as an example, when they uploaded their entire discography to Spotify,
Yeah.
all of their stuff got millions and millions of plays right away. And that's that's a fucking lot of money right there.
Yeah.
Like, and even for some of the stuff that Andrew and I do that have had like, 200,000 or whatever plays on Spotify, that still pays us fucking pretty well.
Yeah.
Like, it's not chump change. It's not just like a little fart. It's like a decent amount of money. Yeah. Like, that's what I don't get. Like, what's the harm in just uploading it anyways?
I don't know,
just do it and see what happens. Like, you never fucking know.
Yeah. Like, for reference, I mean, I'm not going to say the exact numbers, obviously, but like, I think that digital distribution as a whole, so that's like Spotify, Apple, iTunes, every type of thing like that all combined, accounted for like 25%, I think, of my total annual revenue last year. And so far this year, it looks like it's going to be about the same. Obviously, we're only 5 months in, but, still, it's pretty obvious. And the interesting thing about that is out of that money that I get from streaming, like 90% of that is just from Spotify. And then the other 10% is from every other streaming platform combined. So again, that's why I don't understand why people are so adamant, especially about Spotify, when it is the biggest one. And it also, in our case at least, pays the most. So I just don't understand why people have a vendetta against that particular streaming service. I think that what you said... Sorry, I think that what you said is right, where they technically, like, they do pay out like the least per stream. That is true. But the thing is, like, if that's where the most users are and the most listeners are, even if the platform as a whole pays out less, you're going to get more plays there. So you're going to make more money there anyways. So I just don't really see... It ends up
balancing itself out.
Yeah. And then in addition to that, I've always thought of this too. Like, if you buy a CD or an album, however you buy it, like, you pay one time $10, let's say, and then you can play that album like 50,000 times in your lifetime. You're probably not going to play it that much, but still. But if you play those songs the same amount of time on Spotify, that artist will probably actually make more money from that, because it's a pay per play basis, not a pay once, listen however much you want basis. So obviously in some cases that's not beneficial, where people do obviously impulse buy an album and then they end up not liking it, I guess, and don't listen to it again. So in that case, yeah, you would technically make more money off of that one sale. But, like, that's not really the demographic you should be going for anyway. So, I don't know. It's weird. I don't get why people are so adamantly against this.
Well, okay, so what's the alternative to not uploading to streaming services? Uploading to YouTube. If you don't have a partnership that makes you zero money,
or YouTube actually pays less than Spotify, and nobody talks about that, which I think is even funnier. But that's a whole other topic.
So your alternative then is to push physical album sales? Well, guess what, motherfucker? People don't buy CDs anymore. They don't. They really fucking don't. And what, are you going to listen to the radio? Good luck getting your songs on the radio. It's even harder to do that. And then you make even less money unless you're...
And who listens to the radio? Like, nobody, almost nobody listens to the radio anymore either.
Especially if you're an alternative band. Good luck getting on. Like, okay, High Octane or college radio that doesn't pay? Like, come on.
Well, I mean, I guess we could ask our guest about that potentially, because they were on one of those, so...
Right.
I don't know.
But they had a lot of other stuff going on with that.
Yeah, for sure.
But the thing that... My biggest point with this is... Okay, so, Spotify isn't supporting artists. Poo. Well, they are, because we are profiting from it. And also, what was happening before was torrenting was going crazy. Like, people would torrent records, and then you would make literally zero money on it, and your album sales would go down the fucking shit, or even worse than they are now, right?
Yeah.
So it's pretty much almost completely obliterated the torrenting community, unless you're a band that is older and doesn't have their music on Spotify. That would be the only kind of option, really, would either be the buy record or torrent it. But that's not really a thing.
Yeah, and like, even again with Spotify in particular, like, it can be free for anyone. So like, even if you're not playing for Spotify Premium, like, you can still listen to stuff on there. You just have ad breaks. So again, it's kind of like, in my opinion, it's perfect, because if you don't want ads, you just pay a monthly fee, which is not that expensive. It's like $10. Or if you don't want to pay $10 or can't afford $10, then you just have to listen to ads every once in a while. So, and that still pays the artist. So either way, the artist is still getting paid, no matter if the person is listening to it for free or if they're paying. So that seems pretty fucking good to me. I don't know.
The argument is completely invalid, and like, I hope that there are people who might have thought that way and maybe listen to this now and understand what we're saying. Like, a lot of it too is people just literally not understanding. It's not as though they're like, fuck Spotify. They just literally don't get it, and it takes explaining it to them to figure it out.
Or they saw one of their favorite artists say fuck Spotify, so they are like, oh, well, this band said that, so therefore it must be true. But I want to make a counter argument for that as someone who makes good money off of Spotify. I think it's great. And a lot of those artists and bands who do complain about it have also a huge, severe lack of understanding on how it actually works. So like I was mentioning earlier, a lot of these artists that do complain about it usually are under a record label contract. So they don't understand that it's like they're making so little money because their label is fucking them over, not Spotify itself, you know? Because it's like, yeah, Spotify pays, you know, not much, but then on top of that, your label is probably also taking a huge cut of that. And then in addition to that, if you're in a band with like 5 people, you're also splitting that money 5 ways. So like, of course, it looks like it's basically no money, but a lot of artists kind of don't think of that for some reason. Whereas if they sell their physical CD at a show, then that's pure profit. So I guess that's like where they're coming from, perhaps. That's like the only logical explanation I can personally think of, at least.
How much does it cost to press CDs?
I have no idea because we never did it because it was too expensive.
The answer is a lot.
Yeah.
So your chances of getting a return income on those physical CDs is pretty fucking low.
Yeah.
A lot of the times too when bands have CDs, a lot of them are giveaways. Like you give away CDs, which means you're now making zero profit,
and
as opposed to as opposed to like, I don't know, going through a distributor like we do with DistroKid.
Yeah.
The cost is super fucking low, and then you have the potential to make even more money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like $15 a year or something like that. I'm pretty sure I just did a video on it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
it's not that much in comparison, and like with the potential of what you could potentially make, it doesn't make sense. Like the argument is so fucking stupid. Like,
yeah,
it doesn't cost that much, and it, like specifically with DistroKid too, it's super easy to upload music on there. Like it's really easy to do. Like if you have a single on a record that you want to release before the record, you can do that, and then when the record comes out, it's all in the same place. Like you don't have to worry about uploading things twice. Like,
yeah.
I don't know, man. There's so much that, you know, everybody can do to utilize the platform, and basically what the future of music is for the most part.
Yeah.
I don't
know. That's pretty much all I have to say about it. I guess, yeah. I mean, if anyone's listening that thinks that Spotify is bad, hopefully we convince you. Sorry if we said it in kind of a aggressive way, but it's just an argument that we hear all the time. And it gets frustrating to deal with, just like people asking our string gauges all the time.
Could you compare Netflix to Spotify for movies and TV shows?
Yeah, it's the exact same thing.
It's the exact same thing, right?
Exact same thing.
Yeah. Like, I mean, given not every single fucking movie ever made is uploaded on Netflix, but it's the same thing for music, right?
It's the same idea.
Yeah.
And that also is a good point, too, because I don't think I've ever seen anyone complain that Netflix doesn't support like movie directors or something like that. So why is it a thing about music? I don't know.
Who fucking knows? I'd actually be curious to know what the Netflix deal is.
I have no idea. It's obviously quite a lot more complicated than music, because like definitely not everyone can just go upload a fucking movie to Netflix. Like there's obviously a much more involved process in there, but and also I don't know if they pay like on a per stream basis or if they just outright buy. But I mean, I have no idea. I don't think that either of us will ever know unless we talk to someone who's in that industry at some point in time, I guess.
It's true. I might ask around. I'm kind of curious.
Yeah.
I have a lot of friends that work on Netflix shows. Whether they know about it or not, I'm not sure. But, you know, usually anytime I've worked on a film set that's come through the Vogue or anywhere else, and we know that the show is being funded by Netflix, we always know it's going to be a good fucking day because that's a lot of money. Like tons of fucking money.
Yeah.
So, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Food cart, baby. Who are we talking to?
We are talking to Spiritbox today. We got all 3 members on here, or we will have all 3 members on here. We got Courtney, Mike, and Bill. Yeah, it's gonna be fucking awesome. I'm really excited. They're all good friends of ours, so it'll be a lot of fun talking to them. And also, they all have very different and very unique life experiences up until joining Spiritbox, which is something I think that a lot of people will not know about, is how much industry experience they actually have and like what bands they used to be in before Spiritbox and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Like Spiritbox didn't just come out of nowhere with no plan or anything. Like all of these homies plan everything to the nth degree, and they like think about everything they do a lot. Yeah. They stress about it a lot. So you're going to get to hear, about that process and what it was like playing in the bands that they played in too, because the bands that they played in were substantially like pretty big bands.
Yeah.
Like I Wrestled a Bear once, fucking Fallen Archaea, Living with Lions, Textbook Tragedy. Like there's a lot of super awesome bands. So we're going to probably hear some good stories about each of them and, get into that.
Yeah.
Without further ado, here's Spiritbox. What's up, y'all? It's Just Noise Boys. We're back. Stoked for this one. Might be a long one. We'll find out. We're here with the 3 motherfuckers from Spiritbox. Courtney, Mike, and Bill. What's up, y'all?
Hello. Hello, guys. All right. You know what? Let's start this out like this. Now, remember, boys, just because we're all familiar with each other, and just because... Bill, you hang out with Johnny and Andrew and you talk shit when you cut their hair. Remember, everyone's going to see our conversation, so we all have to be good.
Yes.
And we can't be the Courtney, Bill, and Michael that would hang out with Andrew and Johnny in Vancouver and drink White Claw.
That is true.
Yeah, we don't cut anything. We leave everything in.
Ooh, good thing you said that.
You can
edit this, right? Necessary disclaimer, 100%.
Yeah, okay. Just so you know, we thought we'd tell you that right now as we start. So that's
Oh God.
How's quarantine been for y'all? You been surviving?
Yeah. It's been just as depressing as everyone else who's in quarantine, but at least, it's probably the same thing with you guys. Like, it's just nice that we're all able to like get on Zoom meetings and stuff like this. So like we haven't seen Bill since the fateful last day of the canceled tour when we were all in the airport. But we'll see him soon. So we're
pretty
we're like
anticlimactic goodbye too. It was just like we got off the plane and then they were going to catch the transfer to Victoria, and I just wanted to get the hell out of the airport as soon as possible. So it was like, okay, bye. Yeah, this sucks. Okay, and then we just like
we thought too,
because we thought that we were gonna kind of go through customs together or something, but I had to go through to the customs computers, and then they just took a secret way over to Victoria. So
yeah, I literally was like, well. See you later.
Yeah.
Oh my God. We are going to get into that. That's like near the bottom of my questions because I know how absolutely fucked that was and stressful, and
but
we all felt so bad for you guys from here.
Oh yeah.
But we like complaining, so definitely, you can ask us anything.
We like
complain
complaining
all the
too.
time.
That's what our whole intro was, us complaining about people that complain about Spotify. So
hell yeah,
damn.
The reason why I said this podcast is probably going to be a little bit long is because each and every one of you have kind of had a pretty long music career and have done a lot of really cool things and played in a lot of really cool bands. So the way I kind of have this set up is I have little sections for each of you, and we're kind of just going to go through like early beginnings, influences, first bands, what got you into doing what you do now, and kind of just go from there. So let's just start right away.
Okay.
Let's do it.
So we'll start with Courtney. So tell us about the early beginnings, your influences, first bands, what started your vocal career and all that fun stuff.
Well, I've been playing music in, my own band now since 2007, like that, you know, that wasn't just like my youth group band or like something that grown-ups put together. And so, you know, I think that I think this, maybe this isn't true, but I think that all of us have all been in a very small amount of bands compared to the average person that's been playing music this long. So I've been in 3 bands. I've been in my first band, Unicron, from 2007 to 2012. Then you'll notice a theme here. Then straight into my band, I Wrestled a Bear Once, jettisoned in there from 2012 to 2015. And then quit that, and then straight into making our band Spiritbox. And then that technically became a band at the end of 2017. So we like to think we've been a band for like 2.5 years of like, you know, literally being a band in the public.
Right.
And then I think that, you know, for someone that started playing metal music in my first bands, I think I have like a really like very poserish seeming musical influence, because I truly didn't listen to metal music at all when I started playing. My band was with my little brother, and it was more like, it was like, I know Rage Against the Machine with singing is Audio Slave. Yes, but it was like Rage Against the Machine with singing and a lady. So
Right.
it was a lady audio slave, I guess.
Did you rap?
Huh? No. No. No, but no, it's been so sick.
Yeah.
But no, so that band like kind of just evolved into, I guess, a metal band, because that's what, you know, it's like as my little brother started discovering that music, you know, usually it's like the big brother or big sister or older person's the one showing you, hey, you got to listen to this. You got to hear Slipknot, here's Korn, like all that kind of stuff.
Right.
I never had that. I was the oldest, and I didn't have friends that really listened to that kind of music. And so I kind of was like reverse progressing through that. So as my little brother went on his, you know, Canadian metalcore child journey, then I started being exposed to metal. So then I started, and I really like jumped from, I didn't listen to any like kind of commercially stuff. I jumped from, you know, being into System of a Down to then going to like Protest the Hero and like Despised Icon and stuff.
Right.
And part of that was probably because I wanted to seem like I was like super cool and had like all this cred and stuff, but I truly just didn't appreciate like the more commercially like new metal type stuff. And now I've learned to appreciate that a lot more. So I think that my biggest influence is just like the gateway into heavy music for most kids is like, you know, System of a Down, like people our age. And then you start to go back through the years, and then you discover Metallica and Pantera and stuff like that. So
Right.
my metal education was like very, I think it was very weird. It was like a reverse metal education.
Right.
I mean,
so
that
when it
sounds-
comes,
Sorry, go ahead.
sorry, when it comes to you going from, I'm assuming you started actually singing, or clean singing as us metal idiots call it,
Yeah.
before you moved on to screaming. So
Yeah.
what was that first band or that first introduction to screaming that made you want to scream?
God, I think maybe, God, what was it? It was just, you know, I never thought about it like that. It's just that my little brother made a part that was in drop D, and it was like, and I remember how the riff in it went, it was in this song that went, and it went, dun, 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 dun. It sounded like that Velvet Revolver song, but slow. Like, and I'm like, all right, I'll just do some screamies. Like, I completely cultural appropriated screaming for my own band.
Right.
And so I never thought, like, there was never someone that influenced me. It's just that I just listened to the song and I'm like, this dissonant stuff needs this type of vocals over it. So I was really bad, but I learned how to scream, kinda. And it took me a long time before I would consider myself good. But that was back in the day when it didn't really matter because you only just played stuff, for your friends at like a, Knights of Columbus Hall or something.
Right.
Yeah.
I think a lot of like common trends for like people who do scream is that we never learned from anybody because we didn't really have that option. So a lot of it was just self-taught, mimicking people and like trying to do what they do. And then in doing that, you kind of learn how to do it unofficially. You know?
Like I learned about all those bands from watching Zen of Screaming. Like that's how I started going, oh yes, Lamb of God, yes. Oh, cool. Arch Enemy, yes,
Yeah.
And but I as I got older, like I did really like I really started to Every Time I Die really started to resonate with me, and some Alexis on Fire. But really, like I really liked Protest the Hero a lot. And Between the Buried and Me. I liked stuff like that was very fluid. They could kind of just go back and forth. And I guess probably because I identified with that style, because I like to go back and forth between singing and screaming too.
Makes sense. Right. It's interesting that you started, or I guess like the more progressive stuff like Protest the Hero and Between the Buried and Me was a bigger influence than like metalcore, because metalcore is also kind of like that, where it has like the singing and screaming.
Yeah.
But
I would say, to be quite honest, even though I am in that world and genre and I appreciate my like music that I've learned of since then, I didn't know any of those bands that would be on like Warped Tour or Mayhem Festival, any of that. I literally had never heard of them. After the Burial, that kind of stuff. Like I didn't know that they existed till I was a little bit older, like maybe 3 years into doing metal music. Gotcha. I started trying to, find out what everyone else was doing more, and to see what people liked. And then I started to discover like the metalcore world, but I didn't know anything. It's like, I don't know what it is. I think it's just probably part of just being a girl is like, you're always having to try to like prove to everyone that you're like, authentic and you have that cred. And so I just was like, I don't fucking care, guys. I don't know anything about metal music, and I don't care. Like, so my education came later in that world. Yeah. And
I'm sure that was a lot more fun doing it organically that way than trying to be like, yeah, I listen to Metallica too, and blah blah blah. Like
that's way too much effort.
It's just like, fuck that.
No, it's weird. It always just came naturally to me, and it was always a slow progression. Like one song had 10 seconds of screaming, and then 20, and then it got to 50-50, and now I have songs where I have all screaming in them. But yeah, I never really thought about it like that. I guess I just like everything in the genre in general because it's so open to it's both like extremely open-minded and snooty at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's like it's this weird juxtaposition where it's like both the most snobby genre ever, and then also just the most accepting thing ever. None of us could make it in the pop world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like everyone is so accepting. So as far as like not caring, we don't all have to be like hot and young and rich. Exactly. Which is perfect because we're none of those.
You get to choose one.
Yeah. Only one.
The pop world is fucking hard, man. I got close to being in it, and I'm glad I didn't end up doing it because it was brutal.
It's hard. And I love that. I love that world and that music. But don't you always find it funny when your parents are like, I wish you would do, I wish you'd have such a beautiful voice. I wish you'd do country or something.
Yeah.
And I'm like, have you seen those people?
Yeah. Not a fucking chance.
I'm like, they're all more talented, more rich, younger, and have more spare time than me. Like, it's no.
Completely different background.
Yeah, I know. Like, there's two. No, we all like being, we all like being big. I like a big fish, small pond situation.
Exactly. So what you were kind of saying before is you jumped a lot in between bands, like with not a lot of time in between. Yeah. And I know that you've obviously talked about this to death, but can you go into what the transition was like in between Unicron going into Iwabo? Like, how did that happen and all that?
Oh my god. Well, I feel like I'm sorry I'm bulldozing this conversation, but it is very interesting, and it is a cooler story of becoming in a band than anything that you guys have.
No, and honestly, no,
it's crazy.
You know what? 100%, and it's actually really funny that Johnny's like, you've answered this a billion times, but honestly, like, this is probably one of the few times that anyone's actually even given a shit to ask.
What?
So,
no one cares.
yeah, take the floor.
Jeez, I'm asking now. Trust me, we're gonna get to everybody else, but
Yeah.
this is where we're starting.
This is a mind fuck. Like, yeah, you
Okay.
should. Yeah.
So now here's what happened. So I God, how do I begin this? Okay, so I really, really liked the band. This is a perfect example of how I went from like not liking metal to extreme. I loved the band I Wrestled a Bear once. I loved them. I thought it was like, it's so shocking and novelty. It was like one of those, those bands that when you're driving around with your friends, you're like, I'm going to put on Entombment of a Machine, my job for a cowboy, and really shake things up.
You guys ever heard of honky horns before?
Yeah, and like, you know what I mean? Like, you're almost like wanting to shock your friends.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I love the Wrestled a Bear once because there's just so much shock factor in it, like just so much over the top silly stuff going on, and I just thought it was so cool. And obviously having Krista, the female vocalist, was so cool to me, because you guys got to remember at the time, like, we weren't even fetishized really. It was like it just, you would be doing your vocals and there would just be people in the audience and be like, this doesn't look attractive. I don't like it, because your job is to only be attractive to me. And if you aren't doing that, you have no value. Right. And I'm offended. I don't know why. But, or they were just looking at me and thinking I sucked because I sucked. But I don't know. But I had a chip on my shoulder about it. But so anyway, I love that band. And so much to my delight, I was very happy when my band started, dipping its toe into like the regional popular band, like regional metalcore act, like, and branching out of being local. I thought it was so cool because a couple people from Iwabo started following me on social media and like comment, they'd be like, cute dog, and I'd be like, oh my God, like, I love that, right? And I thought it was so cool. But that's as far as it went. And then I think that's how things started. Is I think Steven was like, I like your dog, it's really nice. And I was just like, thanks, man, love the band. I hope that your singer doesn't quit and leave you guys stranded at Warped Tour. And so then in July of 2012, I worked at Lululemon, and I was at work folding pants. And I went on my break. I went downstairs to go on my break, and I noticed a message from this guy named Andrew on Facebook, and he's like, hi. And I still have a photo of the message somewhere, and he's like, hi Courtney, this is Andrew. I am one of the managers of the band I Wrestled a Bear once, and we were wondering if you would like to fill in for the rest of Warped Tour, because our singer Krista can't do it, and so we were just wondering if you'd like to do it. And do you guys know anything about Lululemon? It's like very like goals and stuff. So so downstairs in that staff room, we all have to write this thing called a BHAG. It's called your big, hairy, audacious goal.
Okay.
And so my goal was, it was 2012, and my goal was play Warped Tour by 2015.
That's
and
insane.
So that was like, and I said Courtney, and then you have to have like a little mantra on the bottom that you write of your own. And so my thing was, music is my life, and for music I will suffer. It was kind of like sarcastic. But,
so relatable.
Not dramatic at all.
It was like kind of an inside joke thing between all of us, and then I just wrote that on the wall because I thought it was so weird that we were like writing weird mantras that we made up on the wall.
Right.
But anyway, so then I was like, I looked up at my goal, and I was like, what? And then I was just like, holy shit. And then I was like, well, how long do I have to prepare for this? And then he goes, we need you to be here tomorrow.
Oh my God.
And I was like, what? I've never met these people. And Like, it was insane. So I let everyone know. I let my band know, and I told my parents and stuff. And I go home, and they booked me a ticket to Tulsa, Oklahoma on the 4th of July, and the show was in St. Louis on July 5th.
Holy shit.
In Missouri, on Warped Tour. So I'm like, now you guys need to understand this, that I don't know any of their songs. I've heard that, like, I like their songs, but have you ever heard one of their songs?
Yeah,
I don't know what the hell.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know what the hell she's saying. No one knows what she's saying. I don't think she knew what she was saying, because the lyrics written down are not what she's saying in those songs. Like, I think obviously I've heard them probably more than anyone in the world. And so I am frantically trying to do my laundry. By the way, I just had to quit my job. I went upstairs and I said, "Hey everyone, I have to quit. I'm going to Warped Tour tomorrow." And they, since it's like hippy dippy Lululemon, they went down and they like crossed my goal off and went, "Go, Courtney, go!"
That's pretty awesome. At least that's cool.
They're the best.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, so I left, and so I'm doing my laundry, and I'm frantically trying to illegally download I Rest Little Bear Went songs, torrent them, and so I can like listen to them on the plane. But then they keep popping up like they're those fake torrents where
this whole thing.
What was it? It was like just like fart noises and stuff.
Yeah, they purposely put a fake version on.
Oh, really?
They always do that.
You would get like 45 seconds into a song, and then it would just be like, and you just like,
awesome.
Oh, god damn it.
So you got to remember that, like, I'm on a plane and I'm trying to learn this stuff. And I sat by this dude who like was the creepiest old man who was like, "Take your glasses off. I want to see your eyes." And I was just like, "Don't." And I was like, "Dude, don't fuck with me right now. I have a lot going on and you don't understand." So I'm trying to learn the songs. I've written them all out. Like, I'll be like, honky horn, country part, like breakdown, and I still have this book with with my little, I wrote out each section of the song, and then I get to the airport in Tulsa. I left the next day at like 4 a.m. Yeah. I get to Tulsa, Oklahoma. A random dude picks me up that like the managers knew. And he drives me 2 hours to Muskogee, Oklahoma, where I pull up to this house, which is a house that the drummer Mikey stayed at, like that he would live at off tour with his friend, who happened to be this crazy millionaire guy. And so I walk into this mansion with this giant tour bus parked outside, and it was 4th of July, so this dude was having a party for all the people that lived on the bus. So I get in, and everyone is just absolutely shit-faced, the most sunburned people you've ever seen. And you have to keep in mind that, like, everyone was so stressed out, because you guys know what your singer leaving a tour means. It doesn't just mean your band's ended, but you know that to go on a tour like Warped Tour, you've invested about $100,000 into the tour, as we now see with the Tourpocalypse. It's very expensive, and you can't just, quit the tour and expect the other band to foot the bill for the bus and the merch, your $20,000 merch order you do every week. And so the other band, Vanna, was going to have to quit Warped Tour as well, because the bus is like $1,500 a day. Who's going to pay for that? And so anyway, I go in there. I don't even know what people are in my band, and which are crew and which are the guys in Vanna. I just know they're all really stoned, drunk, sunburned, and a lot of them had face tattoos. And I was like, everyone has a face tattoo and everyone's sunburned. But then I saw the dog, Mildred, because she's in all their music videos, and I knew everything was going to be okay. Then, so I meet them. They're all on, Mikey's bed in his bedroom, and they're all like, "Hey, it's really nice to meet you. Do you want to get drunk?" Because they're all just like, "Oh my God, our career is ruined.
Over.
Our career is over."
Yeah.
Because now, what I didn't know, and of course, no one ever asks me this, but this was a big dramatic thing. Their singer, Krista, who obviously, they had a tumultuous relationship. It wasn't all just like roses and then she quit. she went home in Dallas to do her laundry, and then she just never came back. And so they were walking up, the intro music was playing as they went up stage, and I believe at the time it was the I Like to Move It song. and they see an email from her being like, I'm pregnant and I quit the band. And they were like, oh, but they were used to playing shows without her all the time anyway, because she just like, I wouldn't play all the time if she didn't feel like it. And so now before this happened, Kevin Lyman, he had them on Main Stage Warped Tour 2 years before. And then on this Warped Tour, we no big deal, but we headlined the Ernie Ball stage. Perhaps you've heard of it. Perhaps you've heard of the Ernie Ball stage. Thank you.
It's a truck.
It's a semi truck, okay, sir.
Still a truck.
It's a semi truck, and the Ernie Ball stage is so quiet you can stand next to the stage and have a full conversation while a band's playing. So anyway, Kevin Lyman, obviously, Krista's doing her thing, like, I'm just not playing this show, not playing that show for whatever reason. Obviously she just wasn't happy doing that, right? And was mentally very stressful on her. And so Kevin Lyman, pulled them all aside and was like, if that happens, if your singer doesn't show up to another show, I'm kicking you off the tour. And so they're like, oh my God, we have 5 weeks of Warped Tour left. And what are we going to do? And coincidentally, this happened the day that Bill's band was done Warped Tour.
Oh, it's insane. Yeah.
So we missed each other by 1 day.
That's so weird.
I think we did see each other in Seattle. I was hi.
At the end, Bill came. I barely even knew Bill, and he's like, I need guest list.
I had met Courtney one time at a party in Victoria.
And he was like, hey, I'm coming to your show. I'm medical royalty. Give me your guest list. And I was like, all right.
I didn't know you were on the same Warped Tour. That's crazy.
And what's so weird is that the joke was I never had guest lists because I didn't know anyone in the States other than my grandparents and stuff, because I'm from there, but it's all my family. And so that day, like at the end of Warped Tour, like a month in after knowing everyone, they said the joke every day was, Courtney, you got a guest list for us? And I said, I actually do this time. His name is Bill Crook. And then everyone on my bus went, oh, Bill? Oh, we love Bill. And I just was like, what the hell? Why does everyone know this dude? And so anyway, don't worry, I'm almost done my story. This is just the best part. So, okay, so anyway, the guys, we don't have time to practice or anything. So so that night, everyone's drunk and they're shooting fireworks off because it's the 4th of July. And I was like, man. And then they go, all right, here's your bunk. And in the bunk, it was Krista's bunk. It had all her stuff in it, her shoes. God. And I'm not joking. This wasn't on purpose. But inside the bunk, splayed out on the little bunk. Of course, it was the frickin' bottom bunk. It was tampons and a giant dildo.
Oh my God.
Because they would just put it everywhere, and they didn't realize. So they were horrified that they were like, we did not. And so luckily there was also some girls on the bus, Steven's girlfriend and her sister. They were working for for Band Happy that year. So that was lovely. I felt more comfortable. I wasn't just with a bunch of strangers that I'd never met that were just all big scary guys. Mm-hmm. So then the next morning I wake up and one of the guys, I think his name is Brian Newell. At the time I think he ended up being in Great American Ghost, but he was Vanna's tour manager. And he gets up with me and he goes, all right, I'm going to take you around. Here's a bike. It's one of those electric bikes. And we start zooming around Warped Tour, and he's like, all right, we gotta get you a pass, and we gotta get you this. And he showed me the ropes. He's like, all right, so every morning you go here, and then you go to lunch here, and yada yada yada, and then you have to, the meet and greets are here, and then the water is under the stages. Go under any stage if you want some water, but they're in Monster Energy cans, just explaining everything to me. And that was a lot to take in. Meanwhile, you guys have to remember that then a famous person that I was a huge fan of would just walk by me, and I'd be like, oh. Then finally it's our time to go play. It was 110 degrees outside. It was so hot that my phone case melted when I was playing. I had my phone up on the stage and it melted. And so when I'm going up there, obviously this caused a lot of commotion. A girl left, a girl quit Warped Tour, and then the next day, a new person that they never met was in their place. It was pandemonium. Every band that those guys knew was watching me. So I go on the stage, and it's like Chelsea Grins all there going, "You can do it, Courtney." And I'm like, I'm not joking. Newfound Glory was there, all in their basketball jerseys, because they were about to go on stage, and they were like, "You can do this, girl. You got this."
Jesus Christ.
And all those and Every Time I Die, who I'm a huge fan of, and some other bands, and obviously Vanna, they were up there. And it was crazy. And I went out, and no one, I just was like, ugh, I don't know if people are going to like boo me or whatever. And I just winged it, you guys. I didn't know anything. I didn't know anywhere. I was just going, bleh, like I didn't know shit. I just went out there and just kind of knew some words. It's up on YouTube if you want to see it. I clearly am just going like, oh, and I did a good job.
Well, I think, to add to all this, like, I think the big mistake was that the band, instead of putting out a press release being like, all right, guys, here's the deal. We're in a really tight spot, but this person that we've never met before is going to come in. So like, give her some time, blah, blah, blah. Instead of doing that, they were like, oh, I just want to give you guys an update. Everything's great. And our really good friend Courtney is coming around and she's going to fill the spot. So like immediately from the get-go, she was set up for failure.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Oh my God.
So everyone's going to these shows being like, oh, I can't wait to watch this like amazing new vocal, because obviously Courtney is amazing, but it's just like,
I'm not that amazing.
When you're set up like that, when you don't know any of it,
yeah,
it's like, and you're in a situation where you're literally there to save everyone's ass.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to be so hard on someone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
right.
Yeah. So people were like there was people that were pretty mean to me over the years about not being good or whatever, but I'm like, at least I'm here playing.
Yeah.
It was better than
you
some
literally
people.
saved that band.
Yeah. I did. And so anyway, the guys that were the management for Iwabo, they are also now they're a team, and Jason and Andrew, but mainly Jason, they are our managers for Spiritbox.
Oh, nice.
So like that,
Crazy.
we've known now. So these guys have been with me like for this whole career.
8 years.
And so anyway, other than that, yeah, the other fun fact that's a fun novel thing is like, I didn't have a practice with my band until I was in the band for a month and a half. So, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't have a practice until after Warped Tour, when I then had to go move down to LA. And during Warped Tour, they're like, hey, we really like you. Would you like to go on a world tour? Because we already have a world tour set up for 6 months. And I was like, okay.
Jeez.
So
That's
they're like,
fucking crazy.
So then
way crazier than I thought it was going to be.
dude, and so then I went to I practiced a couple times, and then I went to Europe. Then I did the States. Then I did Australia, a bunch of dates in Japan, and a couple different Asian dates, and ended it in Jakarta, Indonesia, at a festival in December of 2012. And it was really awesome. And so yeah, that basically sums up my time in that band. Is just like, that whole thing was insane, and it made me mad that no one cared, because that's a crazy story. That's the story of that Mark Wahlberg Rockstar movie where they just like pull the dude out of the audience and they're like, you sing. Well, so, I was a fan of them.
I think the reason why no one really bothered to ask was because like they had the answer right at the get go, when everyone was like, everything's great and we got a good person coming in, we know her really well. It was like, there's no
so why would they
story
ask?
there.
Yeah,
like, why would you?
I mean, I definitely didn't know that. I had seen that the ex-vocalist was pregnant and she quit, but that was all I knew. I didn't know there was like way more to it, obviously, until now.
She went to go do her laundry and then never came back. So that was always my joke to the guys. I'd be like, I gotta go do my laundry, guys.
Oh my God. Is that video still on YouTube? That like tour doc when you first joined Warped Tour? Have you seen that before?
Yeah. Oh my God. I recently watched that with Michael's dad a couple weeks ago before the tour, because I was after the burials in it, and I was showing him, hey, I've known these guys for like 8 years. Yeah. And then I was like, oh my God. Everyone in my band had a drinking problem. We were all just drunk. we were all we just drank the whole time.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
yeah.
Because it's just a bunch. I was like, this is funny, right? And then it's just a bunch of all like older people being like, just like passed out. We're like this.
That story like is so good, but it legitimately gives me anxiety.
Yeah.
It's just like so stressful, like the whole way through.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a lot of stress.
It was very stressful, and I'm glad it happened to me though, because I'm like, you know what? If I could do that, and everyone on Warped Tour all told me the same thing. They're like, if you can get through Warped Tour, you can do any tour. This is the hardest tour you can do. If you can do this, you can do anything. So you guys have to remember, my first real tour was me like with a full crew on a bus. So I never had to do anything. I didn't have to load any gear. I would just wake up at like 1 o'clock every day and then be like, ooh, I guess what time do I have a meet and greet? Oh, and then I just go get breakfast. Or I never ate breakfast because I never was awake during breakfast time. So I was like, a little princess for the first, year of being in my band. I just, was in buses and getting flown everywhere. And I was like, oh, this is great.
That's fucking crazy.
It's insane.
Yeah.
And that's the short version. Believe it or not, one of these nights, sometime when we can hang out again, I'll tell you more, even more embarrassing stuff about it, and you're gonna
awesome.
love it.
I'm definitely curious because there's a lot of things that I would love to ask about because I've just kind of been watching this from afar for a really long time. Mm-hmm. But we'll move on to Mike now.
His story is slightly less dramatic.
No, it was fucking awesome. I love that. It was fantastic. Anyways, so Mike, like, what was your early like beginnings of music like too? Like, what were your influences from a guitar player's perspective, first bands, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of had the more traditional, metal guitar player upbringing in that, when I was young, it was immediately being hooked to Limp Bizkit and System of a Down and Linkin Park and that whole era. Mm-hmm. And then kind of entering like a grunge classic rock phase. And then I remember distinctly when I was in grade 9 going into guitar class and my friend having the Dillinger Escape Plan DVD on the TV and Panasonic Youth. That's the song, right? The Panasonic Youth song?
Yep.
Their music video for that was playing. And I was just like so weirdly obsessed with it right off the bat, where I was so just like, I have never heard or seen anything like this before. And that group of people that were obviously like into that then showed me like Protest the Hero, basically every tech band, if you want to say,
right.
Became obsessed with that. And with guitar playing through that, it was just like I went through a phase of maybe 4 years where it was just like, I want to learn every complicated song I could possibly learn. And then that evolved into writing my own music and then stumbling upon, starting that first band I was in, Fallen Archaea, when I was 16. And that's basically been it since. It's just been like, being hooked for, I guess, now 12 years. So
yeah.
Crazy, man. Crazy.
Yeah.
What was the early days of Fallen Archaea like? I've been pretty vocal about this. I'm a huge Fallen Archaea fan, and like the first show I ever saw in my entire life was Fallen Archaea in fucking Penticton.
I know,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. When you told me that, I was pretty mind blown because I was just thinking about like the older days, even recently, and I was like, man, that's such a long ass time ago. It's so crazy.
What was
Can
that?
we all agree they should have been more famous?
I think it was 2008, 2009. Yeah, one of those years. Yeah.
They should have been a big band. And so should have Bill's band, Textbook. They should have been huge bands.
Well, to answer your question, the early years were rough. Like, really rough. Like,
right.
I mean, I don't know. It was like suffering an identity crisis for a little while. And then, because we were young, we were still in high school, like, I remember, like, wanting to be in a band so bad. And I went into West 49, of all places, in the mall. And this guy I went to school with was working there, and he goes, "Hey, you play guitar, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he says, "Do you want to come to one of our practices? We need a guitar player." I said, "Sure." And I walked in to our what ended up being my vocalist's house, and he looked like he was 30 years old. He had like full sleeve of tattoos and like, you know what I mean? I was like, I'm so sheltered at that point. I'd never been exposed to people who like looked like almost like, what would the word be? Alternative.
Yeah. He had snake bites.
I was like, man, you got to have kids or something. But he was, we started talking, and, basically I was in the band, and then a month later he booked us a Western Canadian tour, and it was just like, I basically was never at school anymore. Like the last 2 years of high school, I just would nip out every month or two, which was not a good idea, but we did that anyways. And that band was very much like a just tour all the time and just, grind and write as much as possible. But with it being, such a long time ago, we didn't really have the capabilities that we have now of writing. So it was just all jamming and spending as much money as possible on touring,
right?
And that's what I mean. Like, it was just like the early days were very rough because we had no sense of what we wanted to be. It was just like discovering heavy music and writing it at the same time. And it wasn't until we came out with the record called Gatherings that we were kind of like, okay, we can kind of see us going in this direction. And that's when like the 7-string was introduced in that way, and it kind of got a little bit more cohesive at that point. But the first, I want to say 2.5 years of that band, I can't even listen to any of the songs. I'm just like, oh God,
As with like every band's beginning, I feel like.
Yeah.
But like,
Behind These Walls was fucking dope though. Like back in the day, I used to jam that stuff so hard because it was like my first real introduction to metalcore in that way, and seeing it live, I was just like, I don't know what's happening, but I really like what's happening.
They were so good. They were so good. And they were all so young.
I think the first thing I ever heard from you guys was way later. I think I heard the Gatherings EP, but it was like years after you guys released it, because you had that like hiatus in between. Was it that album and the next one? That was the break time, right? If I remember correctly.
We came out with Gatherings, and we still had the same mentality where it was just like, we're just gonna tour as much as possible, blah blah blah. And we just all got burnt out. We got to the point where we went, the band went on its first American tour, and at that point it had been about 3.5 years into being a band before we experienced the American market and how hard that is, and how it was like restarting all over again. And when you're younger and you're in you're just breaking into your 20s, you feel like, oh, I'm so old, like I can't just be, you know what I mean? We're just so hilarious and delusional. Yeah. But at that time it's like, well, I don't know how much, some people in the band were like, I don't know how much time I can dedicate to this, blah blah blah, because it's not really working. And then we took a hiatus, and through that hiatus I just basically only wanted to do that. So I was like writing as much as possible, and we did the Aura Magenta record, and we did it in a completely different way, where like we didn't meet up at all. It was all written through Skype, and that was around the time when all of that was just becoming possible, or at least I was getting comfortable doing it that way.
Right.
And then as we were working on it, it just kind of became apparent that Iwabo was going to need a new member. Me and Courtney had been together, and I had been visiting those guys throughout the last year or so of Courtney being in the band.
He'd come on tour.
I come on tour with them, and I visit them. I got to know them really well, and I kind of had the inside scoop as to what was going on. And basically one day, Courtney texted me and was just like, "Hey, I think John actually finally quit."
And we're like, oh my God, finally.
So immediately I texted all of them. I was like, hey, you guys.
Yeah, he made a group text. Hey, guys.
Hi, how's it going? And it was just kind of one of those things where I was in the middle of this thing that I'd been working on for 2 years, and it was taking so long and everything. But I obviously was obsessed with it and loved it, but I also saw this opportunity, and getting that experience and playing Iwabo's songs, because I was a fan of Iwabo. It wasn't like something that I saw as a possibility, you know what I mean?
Right.
And so I basically was like, I don't care what it takes, I will pay my own way. You don't have to pay me to do the tour, but I want to do this next tour.
And he sold all his gear, and he bought his own
all
flights.
My gear. I bought all my flights, and
crazy.
the tour that my first tour. It's funny when Courtney explains that she was babied at first. For me, looking back, I was definitely babied because the first tour that I got to do was a sold out Attila tour.
Yeah, so I was like, this is what it's always going to be like.
Yeah, so I went from like not really having that much in-depth experience of what it's actually like to be in like that like middle level to then getting like a crash course of like a 30-day sold out tour of that. And I definitely learned a lot, but yeah, you know, it's just kind of one of those things where it just was like a huge roller coaster ride of like a transition between something that I was so dedicated to and just was like, this is, you know, I have to make this work, to then having this new opportunity and realizing like, well, I know now that can't work. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a thing. So
you have to tell them about the fun fact that ties all of this in together. Is that we were both in LA recording our records at the same time, and our house and the person that Michael chose to record his Aura Magenta record happened to only be like 3 miles apart.
Yeah.
And who was it?
It was Dan Bronstein, the guy who does all of our records now.
Oh, shit. Look at all
that
the connectivity.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
there's layers to this.
Yeah.
Many layers.
And I sang on it too. That was like our first collaboration.
Yeah, it was the first collab for sure.
Yeah.
Was that was Motive, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was Motive, and then you also did some harmonies.
And I just
go a couple other songs too.
Yeah.
Yeah. She killed it.
So that was our first time like actually meeting Dan, and that was our first like we've had that special chemistry with him.
Yeah.
And then I ruined everything by John quitting and then us forcing Michael to be in our band. I think Fallen Archaea probably could have gone on to do some good stuff, but we ruined that.
Yeah.
But you know, like when someone just, you know, no offense, John ruled, but he, you know, I wabbo John, gotta give it up to him. But you know, we were just like, I was like, dude, just leave. Like, you're so miserable. So then finally he's like, I'm quitting. We were all like, awesome. Okay, let's move on.
Let's get some young blood.
Let's get some young Michael in here.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. But what was it like writing that record with Iwabo? Like, did you kind of take over the writing process when you rolled in, or was it still kind of a collaborative effort?
You can tell the real story, Michael.
You know, it's up to you.
I didn't completely take over whatsoever. It was one of those things where, you know, at the time I was gung ho. I was just like, you know, this is gonna be great. I can, you know, because we had a cohesive plan. We were all on the same page. We're like, we're gonna try to change the image of the band. We're gonna try to be heavier because that's what we're good at. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, you know, I came in, and let's just put it this way: I would present full songs, and then, you know, the other member who would also be, you know, usually the head writer would be like, well, I've never had someone actually give me a full song before, right? So it was a learning curve to kind of figure out what their whole thing was, because Iwabo wrote in a way where they would write a part, then they would write down in an Excel sheet what the name was, what the BPM was, and just kind of like a generalization of like what that part could fit in, because whenever they would get stuck, they would go to the Excel sheet and be like, all right, I'm at 130 BPM. What do I have at 130 BPM? And
which is awesome.
They go down and be like, oh, I got this samba part I could put in. And then they'd be like, oh, it works. You know, like
it makes a lot more sense. Like
that's a crazy way of doing it.
That's crazy, yeah.
Mental. So it was kind of one of those things where like I went from something that I was used to being, you know, the guy, to then having to like collaborate with the guy, you know? Mm-hmm. But, you know, it just got to the point where during that time too, there was a lot of personal struggles with some of the guys, and you know, it was a little bit difficult at times, and we had to have a lot of compromise. I was very fortunate to have, like, I want to say like 70% of my material on the record. I actually at the end of it didn't think that was going to be the case, but you know, whether we just ran out of time or whatever happened, it is what it is. But you know, it was definitely a huge learning experience, and I'm very proud of the album. It's just looking back now, I listen to it and it's just like, what the fuck were we thinking? Like, it's just insanity.
Have
like,
you ever heard it?
It's like
I have.
The first song I heard from that album was "Gift of Death," obviously, because that was the first single you guys dropped, and I was fucking mind blown. I was like, this is insane, and I was like, that's still by far my favorite song from Iwabo. Like, no comparison, in my opinion.
Oh, thank you. And, it's a fun one.
Yeah, and that was also like I'm pretty sure that was the first music video you did where Mike was in it as well.
Yeah.
I think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And
technically, there was a video where he was the guy with the butt face.
Sorry, what was that?
I was in another video where I played
before he was in the band.
What was his name? Flutterbuns?
Yeah, he had an ass for a face.
I had an ass for a face.
So
I'm uncredited on that one, but yeah.
No, I liked that record because, like you said, 70% of your stuff made the album. You could actually you could hear your songwriting on it.
Yeah,
and I think just from enjoying Fallen Archaea and being obsessed with Or Magenta, I could really get into that record more than previous Iwaba material because I was like, oh, this is just Mike going fucking crazy.
Well, the mentality of it was just we need to make something just disgusting and dissonant, and if the band had so many moments in their previous catalog too that was just Dan's on steroids. It's just that the quality of the recordings and everything, you couldn't really hear it that well. You know what I mean? But there's some stuff on their old shit where it's just what the fuck's going on? But with Hail Mary, what we wanted to do is we wanted to take that and just times it by 10. You know what I mean? To the point where we were just using the weirdest gear setups and everything to kind of make these weird sounds that I don't even remember how we got them, to be honest with you. But like I was saying, looking back now, it's just hilarious that we went from I went from trying to go and do as many notes as possible to now in this band Spiritbox, it's the complete opposite. It's the less notes you play, the better it is.
Yeah, we're just different people now.
Yeah, different people. Yeah. It was a different time.
Of course. Yeah. The songwriting aspect of your writing obviously matured, I guess you could say.
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I actually kind of wanted to just go back really quick before I move on to Bill. And sorry, Bill, for having you sit there the whole fucking time.
He's like, "Fuck! I've heard these stories so many
God
times."
damn.
No, I always enjoy listening to it though.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Back in the Fallen Archaea days, you guys did a tour with Volumes, right?
Yeah.
What was that like, and what was that band like at that point? I'm just genuinely curious.
In their prime, man, it was sick. They were just on another level. It was entering into that tour. At that point in our careers and being in that band, it was something that we were talking about for 4 months. It was oh, we're going to have this crazy tour, Structures and Volumes. It's going to be insane. And it was our first introduction to those types of bands where, they have, a laptop with a session. They have a fractal with the MIDI switching and stuff. And it was also my first introduction to a band with one guitar player with a reamp as well, and seeing that happen every night. But aside from them being that young and that tight, and us getting to know them really well,
that's
and everything.
The name of my sex tape.
Heyo. Hey. There's at that time the lineup was sick too, because one of the guys, his name is DJ, he would kind of play several roles in that band depending on the tour. So one tour he'd be on drums, one tour he'd be on guitar. And I'm not kidding you, DJ to this day is still one of the best musicians I've ever seen play any instrument in my life. He is actually kind of, I wouldn't say a Dan's partner or whatever, but they work on productions from time to time. They do hip hop. He does hip hop stuff mostly now.
Good team.
But it was crazy. It was nuts. I've never seen a tighter drummer. And then, Diego was just, even at 19, 20, I can't even remember how old he was. I think he was around that age. Mm-hmm. The guy's right hand was just freaking insane. And, Gus and Mike were just, they would play off each other so well. And that was also one of the few times that I'd been introduced to a dual vocalist situation, but on a really professional level where they had it all mapped out and everything. And Ra was an incredible bass player too. Yeah. So I think, it was probably about 4 months or 3 months before Via came out.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
So they were playing a couple of those songs. They were playing stuff off Concept of Dreaming. And it's a huge highlight of being in that old band was getting to do that type of tour that early on with them. And then, it was interesting too, because throughout the years later, when I would visit Courtney on tour before I was in Iwabo, they did a tour or two with them. So I get to visit them and see them and see their progression and everything. And
Right.
Yeah, it was cool. It was a really awesome opportunity for the time, for sure.
And it made Michael have the best story of all. Is that the festival that you guys did, and then they shut it down.
Okay, the last night of that tour, we played.
It's like legendary, iconic.
I feel bad because we're good friends with Mike Barr, and this all revolves around him. But
he'd love this.
I think he would. I think we talked about it recently when we were there last time. He was like, "Oh shit, I remember that." But we played Scene Fest at the end of the tour. It was the last show. And
that's in Ontario.
Yeah, it was in St. Catharines, Ontario, and it's kind of just like a local palooza where like there's 10 different venues downtown and there's shows going on at the same time, and people, like, the whole city is just shut down and people are walking around, and we're mid-set. We were the last one to play like the small venue on this block, so Volumes and Structures were hanging out, and we were just, whatever. And I just remember watching, because it was a weird stage setup, and I looked to my left, and as I'm playing, and there was a huge staircase, and then just like the crowd or whatever. And Mike Barr was hanging on the staircase, and he was just kind of getting like a bird's eye view of everything. And I'm playing, and I'm just like, whatever. And I look over, and I see this. I'm playing, and I look up, and I see a security guard talking to him, being like, "Don't you fucking," And then I look down again, and I look back up, and then I see that same security guard take his hat and throw it across the audience.
Take Mike Barr's hat. Right?
Yeah. And then I look down, and I look up, and they're just fighting.
Oh god.
Oh my god.
And I was like, oh. And
while you're playing.
So the security guard like headlocks him, and Mike just goes into full rampage mode, and he just like, I don't know how it happened, but they end up outside within 5 seconds. They're on the street, and Mike is just taking on like several people,
and it shut down the whole thing.
And
right?
I'm playing on the stage where like to the back of us is a bunch of windows to the street. It's like a bar, you know what I mean? It's not just like a closed off thing. Mm-hmm. So I turn around, and I'm watching, and I'm playing, and I'm watching these guys fight, and we're still playing. And I looked at Alex, and I'm like, should we stop? And he's like, I don't know.
And
we kept playing, and the whole crowd is being evacuated outside. And so I'm like, we need to stop. Like, this is a big fucking deal. And so we like threw our guitars down to the point where Josh, our other guitar player, when he threw his down, like, he didn't even just like place it down. He's like, oh, and like the whole back of his guitar was completely mangled and like chipped and shit. God. And so we hop out of the venue, out the windows I was just talking about, because they were open. We just like went out.
You're lucky no one stole your gear.
And he's just taking on these people, fucking mangling them. It's crazy. The guy's just got like insane strength. He's just like going for it. And so after us was supposed to be a band called Farewell to Freeway, which I had toured with a year or two before, and so I recognized them, and they were standing there, and there was like probably like 150 people circling around this fight that was going on.
It was a rumble,
and
right?
The vocalist of Farewell to Freeway comes over and is like, hey, thinking he can like mitigate the whole thing, and Mike turns around and just fucking hits him.
That Adam guy who played bass, right? He played bass. No,
the singer. Yeah. I think at this time he was the vocalist. That's why I got confused.
Oh, he was lead screamer then. Yeah.
He didn't hit him in the face. I think he hit him like the arm or something. And he was just like, ugh, and was super confused because he's like, I wasn't expecting that. But I was like, dude, I mean, he's taking on like multiple guys. Like, do you think you're gonna be the one to kind of like, hey, now kids, come on, like it's not gonna work like that. And he just sprinted. He just took off. And we were walking around for a little while, and I finally found the rest of the guys. I went up to DJ, and he was like, man, this is bullshit, man. This is so messed up. And because like literally it shut down the whole block where like the cops were there and everything.
The whole festival.
He's like, I'm never doing this again. I'm never touring with this band again. And I was like, where's Mike? He's like, I don't know. And I guess long story short was that when we were recording our last singles and we were hanging out with him,
he said, where'd you go?
I was like, where'd you go, man? And he's like, man, I ended up in a cop car, and then I was out of the cop car, and then someone else picked me up.
Then you go to a barbecue?
And then he's like, then I went to a barbecue.
What the fuck?
It was
That's
so
fucking
crazy.
Nuts.
So like the last show of the tour, we didn't even get to say goodbye or anything because like the cops were out looking for Volumes, and everybody was just like, in a huge panic because obviously we didn't want Mike to get arrested because he's American. He's in Canada.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother world of problems. But yeah, that was wild. That's
crazy.
Insane.
They were a little little scrappy boys. They're
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's so good, man. That's great.
Ridiculous.
This is random. Was Take the Earth Beneath Us on that tour as well?
No, I think they played the Vancouver show.
Were they a band at the time?
And they were a band at the time. I think they were actually
just started out.
maybe just started out or something. I don't know.
Cool.
Yeah, I remember Ty telling me about that, and I thought I would ask that right before there.
Yeah.
They're sick.
Yes.
I just want to add that venue, I also got in the biggest fight I've ever seen or been in my life, and
it's
the security
it's a cursed
there
venue.
is notorious. They hire they hire these random guys that don't actually have security licenses and they're not trained, and yeah, it's L3, right? Is that where the show was?
Yes, that rings a bell.
Yeah. Known for having like bad songos just guarding the place.
My thing is like, if you're gonna throw my hat, I would probably just walk over and get it.
Not Mike Barr.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, maybe if there was more to it than that, but like literally, the dude was just like, "Fuck you."
It's so funny because he's the most chill. He's like such a chill, relaxed guy.
And
now,
it just was like, it ignited this thing in him. He's like, "I'm gonna fucking kill you," and like he like took on the whole block.
Yeah, if I was in a fight, I'd choose him to help me.
Oh yeah.
Fuck yeah. It sounds like he just did it.
Yeah.
He went for
But
it.
like, he's in a foreign country, probably feeling threatened. Like, I mean, I guess you just duke it up. Like, fuck it.
Yeah,
he's from the valley. He doesn't give a fuck.
He doesn't give a shit.
That's so funny.
Fuck yeah. All right. Well, it's Bill's turn.
Yes.
Thank you for being so fucking patient.
He's
been a
so
patient
So
boy.
sorry.
Yeah.
I'm surprised you're,
That's fine, man.
surprised
We're
your
hanging
wife-
out. This is life now.
I'm surprised your wife
This is
hasn't
our
come
new
in
reality.
being like, "Are you even doing a podcast?" Or are you? Poor Bill.
Yeah.
So yeah, same question to you. What was the early beginnings of Bill Crooks' life like?
I've been involved in music like as long as I can remember. Like my mom and dad put me in like, it's like little kid music lessons when I was like 18 months, and did piano, clarinet, saxophone in school band. And then my parents bought me an acoustic guitar, but I wasn't really interested in it. But it was just like, it was one summer something kind of sparked, and pretty much the same as Michael, like hearing System of a Down, Korn, Limp Bizkit. My best friend Kai showed me Limp Bizkit. Super early days of the internet, so you're going on Kazaa and LimeWire to download these like live videos and stuff. And so I had like my first band I actually played guitar in with my friend Nick, who plays drums, and a couple other dudes. And I was just like, I played guitar, and I was just like, man, like I really want to play with like the best musicians around. But of course, like everyone wants to play guitar and no one wanted to play bass. So I was like, oh, fuck it, I guess I'll play bass. So my friend Kai, he had a band with my friend Adam. So those two and me and my friend Nick, we got together, and we kind of started out like, I don't know, even though like Sum 41 and Pop Punky, and Nick's other band was a bunch of guys that were older than us. I think we were maybe 16, 17, and exact same thing, like almost exactly the same thing as Michael, is that one day we went over to Jam and someone put a live Dillinger Escape Plan video on of Sugar Coated Sour, and it changed. We're like, no, this is what we're going to do. And so Botch, Dillinger, Every Time I Die, all that stuff, Between the Buried and Me. So that band became my first band, A Textbook Tragedy. And same thing, a bunch of local touring. And then I don't know how this happened, but we got a tour, and mind you, so Kai was singing and playing guitar. We were like a 4-piece, so we didn't have like a standalone singer. And somehow we got a full Eastern Canada tour with Lifebruner and Amir. And I'd never even heard Amir before.
Crazy.
And like we were like on the way, we were like driving through Winnipeg on the way to Ontario. We're like, oh, we should listen to them. And they were touring Goodbye to the Gallows that just came out.
Oh
so
fuck! I was gonna ask if that was the era of Amir you were talking about.
That's
yeah.
wild.
And so someone burnt us a CD to put in, and we're driving to Ontario, and then that record starts out the dun 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 dun, and we're just like, oh no, like we were playing like Telecasters and shit.
You guys are gonna kick our asses.
Yeah, but I think I'm sure you guys know too, like even when we think about like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you don't know a lot about what's not happening in Western Canada. You know what I mean? We kind of know what's around, and you see stuff on like Much Music and stuff, but like, message boards at bed. Like we booked our first ever tour on Nexopia, like a Western Canada tour. The whole thing just on the Nexopia message boards. Kai did that, which is pretty crazy. But once we met like the Amir and the Life Ruiner guys, like that opened a whole new thing of like same thing. Like we started tuning to B. I bought a 5-string, that kind of progressed. And then we were like, okay, like we need to find a vocalist. And so we became a 5-piece. We put out a record on Distort, and our first like kind of big chance tour, we did Canadian Music Week out to Ontario, and that tour was us, the Holly Springs Disaster, Architects. I don't even think, Hollow Crown wasn't out yet. But we made friends with the Architects guys, and they took us to the UK. We did like 3 weeks in the UK with them and Misery Signals for the Hollow Crown CD release tour on a bus.
Jeez.
And it was just like, I was like, wow, I need it. This is sick. And then at the end of the tour, they're like, pay, all right, like, we need all this money for the bus. And we're like, oh, we didn't sell any merch. And it's like, I had to like sell my video camera and all this stuff. And,
oh my God.
But it was fine. And we about a year after that, we kind of like started drifting apart. We had already been jamming together for like 6 or 7 years. And, around that point, the bass player of Living with Lions quit. And so I was like, well, I can see, I was like watching my band fall apart. We were doing like a 6-week tour in the States. Actually, funny that kind of the same thing with Courtney is that one day our singer just kind of stopped showing up. And so we just like went on tour back as a 4-piece again.
He had to go do laundry.
Yeah, he went to go do his laundry. So we did that tour, and I just watched the band disintegrate in front of my eyes, and the Living with Lions thing came up. So I joined Lions, and I can't remember, it was maybe 2010, 2011, and I was really fortunate. I got to do a lot with that band. Like did Warped Tour, what was it? Soundwave. We toured Asia. We got to tour Europe. We did like crazy shit. Like we did like a Day to Remember, Ghost Inside, August Burns Red. I don't know why the hell we were on that tour, but
and all the other bands loved them as people. Like every band knew those guys and just like were so excited anytime they'd bring them up. Like they were just so loved by everyone.
Yeah,
right.
We got to do some really cool stuff, and then things kind of started to simmer down a bit. One of the last bigger tours we did Newfound Glory in Canada and America, and I actually met my wife on that tour in Edmonton. And about a year after that, she was living in Vancouver, and the band wasn't really doing as much anymore, and I kind of decided to take a step back from music, and I like went back to school. I learned how to cut hair, and I think it was maybe it was about 2 years into hair cutting, and I hadn't even really been playing my instrument very much. And Courtney hit me up in the summer, and she's like, "Hey, will you check out my new music? I just like want some feedback." And I was like, "Oh my God." And I instantly fell in love with it. And I'm like, "Who's in the band? What is this?" She's like, "Oh yeah, we have a guy playing drums and a guy playing bass." But I was like, I gotta find a way to weasel my way in here.
That's literally one of my questions on here is how, like,
how did I weasel my way in?
Everyone to get you in the band.
The funny thing about if I can butt it for 1 second, the funny thing about it is that we had it, and me and Bill weren't really like buddy yet, and Courtney had obviously met Bill and talked to him a few times, but like they also weren't super close. But when we talked about it, like, who should we send this to like critique it and whatever, we're like, well, we got to send it to Bill and see what he says about it. And so we sent it to him, and Courtney was like, yeah, just like if you have time, if you have like any feedback at all or anything. And I think like, I don't know, was it 2 days went by?
Yeah, and I was like, what the fuck?
2 days went by, and I was like, did Bill send you anything back? And she's like, no, he probably didn't like it. And so I was like, well, just like send him a text and see what he says. And Courtney was like, so did you have like a second to hear it at all? And Bill then just like sends back this like Lord of the Rings novel about like how much he loved it and everything. And I was like,
I freaked when I heard it.
Yeah. It's so funny.
He listened to it like, for days and then gave us his thoughts.
Yeah.
And then that time he said, "I'm so excited to be in your band." And I was like, we already I was like, we already have a bass player. We're just the guys from my Wabo.
No, you
and
know.
he's like,
I don't give a fuck.
He's like, I don't care. And you know how, remember recently, Bill, I was just like, oh, I just am so happy we're in a band together. And it's weird that, like, I feel like we just all known each other for so long. And that's what Bill said to me. He's like, that's because in another life, we were all in a band together.
Oh my God. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
So
sorry, Bill. You can continue. I just wanted to butt in there for a second.
Yeah, and so that was in the summer, and then by February I had weaseled my way in, and we started jamming, and
he came
and it was pretty much around the same time that I met Andrew, and I made him be my friend too.
Yeah. I was gonna say I'm pretty sure that you guys sent me the first Spiritbox EP as well before it was out, and I remember going to get my haircut with Bill, and he was like, "Bro, like, did Mike and Courtney show you this?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's fucking crazy." And we were both like, just sitting there like, "Whoa, this is gonna be awesome." And then, a few months later, he ended up joining the band, and he was like cutting my hair. He's like, "Yeah, so I'm in the band now." And I was like, "What?"
That's so funny.
Well, Andrew's one of the OG buddies to know about the band. Huh?
Yeah, and like something like I haven't really told a lot of people, but like, because I was kind of like not really playing music, and especially I'd been out of like heavy music in a long time. Like, I met Andrew, and just like randomly he came to get his haircut, and I was the one that cut his hair. It wasn't like he knew who I was, but we started chatting, and he just told me about his YouTube and his music, and like that really inspired me to like get back into heavy music and like, research gear and think about my playing and practicing. So it was just, the stars all kind of aligned around the same time for that.
That was honestly crazy how that worked out. I know that, Johnny, you have this written down for later, but fuck it, we'll just talk about it now.
It's like It's Always Sunny when he's talking about Pepe Sylvia.
It's like the dentist system or whatever. No, but yeah, so I used to work, before I quit to do YouTube full time, I worked downtown, and it just so happened that it was like a block away from where Bill works cutting hair. And I just needed a haircut, so I just like Googled like barber shop near me, and it just said like this place, and I was like, cool, works for me. It's right there. I'll just go on my lunch break because I have an hour. Why not? And then I don't remember if I like even. I don't remember if your website works where you can like pick your barber specifically.
You just hit whoever.
Yeah, I think I just clicked random, like anyone who's available during this time, and it was like, your barber is Bill Crook, and I was like, all right, cool. So I went in, and he was like cutting my hair, and it's always like, when you get your haircut by like a random person, you either don't talk or it's just like random, like, so how's your day?
Do you do?
Yeah, so that's literally what happened. Was Bill was doing the barber talk thing, like, so what do you do? And I'm like, I work in the music industry. And he's like, oh, that's cool, like, what do you do? And I was like, I work for blah 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 blah. And he's like, what kind of music? And I was like, well, we work for like hip hop and EDM mostly, but that's not really what I like. And he's like, oh, what do you like? And I was like, well, I'm into like gent and blah blah blah, assuming he just like would have no idea what the fuck I was talking about. He's like, oh really? I toured with Emir. And I was like, hold on, what? And he's like, yeah, and one of my best friends is the guitarist and Architects, and this and this and this. And I'm like, is this dude like fucking with me right now? Like, there's no way this is true.
It's like, oh really?
You had to go check my Wikipedia.
And then I think I actually looked it up after. I was like, Bill Crook, and then it was like Living with Lions and like everything else, and I was like, whoa. And then I found out you're in Textbook Tragedy. And I was like, what the fuck? Because I had heard you guys like years and years and years ago, but obviously you had no idea who any of the members were at that time.
Yeah.
And the reason I found out about Textbook Tragedy was also really weird, because I found out about you guys through a band called the Arusha Accord, which is a band from the UK. So somehow I found out about a local band through a band in the UK and not the other way around.
Yeah, we did a tour with them and did a split EP with them.
Yeah.
Right.
But that is kind of how that worked out. It was like literally a total coincidence that ended up being pretty fucking awesome for sure.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then Andrew just told me about you, pretty much, and I was like, all right, well, fuck my barber. He fucks my shit up. I don't care about him anymore. He literally offers me nothing cool, so I guess I'm just gonna get my haircut by you now.
I definitely like immediately after that haircut messaged like the GP band chat and was like, so my barber just told me this, like what the fuck? And then Johnny was like, no way. And we all had the same reaction. We're like, is he lying or is he fucking with you or something?
Yeah.
It's so funny.
That's awesome.
No, I loved it, man. Like, it was funny. My connection to Textbook Tragedy is my first year of college. My roommate was a drummer, and he was obsessed with your band. He would listen to Kathy Rattlesnake all the time, and he would break apart that song like, the drums are so fucking crazy, man, you have to listen to it. So I ended up just like secondhand listening to your guys' music, but then just becoming like super immersed in it. And I was like, oh fuck, this is sick. And I didn't grow up in Vancouver or anything like that, so I didn't know anything about the scene or the significance until I moved to Vancouver and started, learning about the scene and all that kind of stuff. And then, meeting you, and then you're like, oh, I was in textbook. I was like, what? Like, that's fucking crazy. It's such a small world, man.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I say this to everybody we have on here, but we somehow all have just like aligned and met. And it's really weird how life is, man. It's so strange.
It's bizarre.
Yeah. I feel too, especially like, I don't know if it's a BC thing. I mean, we're so far, but so close at the same time. Like things that were happening to Michael and the sequence that they happened were almost happening to me at the same time. The same bands that we liked first, and then we found this band, and that led us. And basically, you know what I mean? Like it's so crazy.
I mean, for me as well, it's crazy because I first heard Intimidator on my old band's first summer tour. It was like the big thing. It was like like any other band that we're playing with, they were like, man, this record came out called Intimidator. It's so fucked. You have to hear it. And like literally after first listen, I was like, this is my new favorite band. And like
Michael knows every drum hit to every song.
I've listened to that record more than any album on the planet. So it is crazy that like, it all comes full circle and everything just kind of lines up like that.
You and Bill should tell them when you guys first met. It's just so sweet.
Oh yeah.
This is also another weird thing. This is another weird thing too.
Yeah.
Yeah. The first time that we met was it was that summer. It was summer of 2008, and our tour had ended, but we had to hang out in Alberta for like 3 to 4 days.
So you were 16, and
I was
how
like
old was he?
I was like 16, and Bill, I guess
23, 22.
Yeah, something like that. And they were on tour with Means. And so we were like, well, instead of going home, we could just hang out near Calgary for like 3 days and go to their Airdrie, Calgary, and whatever else show. So we went to all 3 shows. And we went and hung out there, and it was wild. Like we met everybody, and we did the typical like teenager have a demo in hand and walk up to them after, like, you guys want to check out my demo?
But that's the cute thing is what they did. They didn't sign you to Roadside Records.
Yeah. Well, Roadside Records is when the band takes your demo and goes, thanks, man. And then on their drive home, they open up the window and they throw it out. And they sign you to Roadside.
Should we sign them to Roadside? Yeah.
Oh yeah. They're going straight to Roadside. 5-record deal.
Yeah. We got a 360 deal on Roadside Records.
But I went up to Bill and I was like, hey, this is kind of weird, but I'm from Victoria and I play in a band. We just did a record. Like, would you want to hear it? And I expected him to just be like, oh yeah, thanks, man, and then walk away. But he was like, do you want to go in our van and listen to it? And that was like a mind fuck for me because I was like, oh,
hey, little boy.
Yeah.
You look nice.
You got any cigarettes? Yeah, we went to the textbook van and we sat there and like, good on him. He listened to like 3 whole songs.
How sweet is that? He was
just like, yeah, this is sick. This is so cool. This is awesome. And me and Alex, the vocalist, were just like blown away. We're like, oh my God, this is so crazy. and then we just
beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cute.
And then we went to the other 2 shows and and it was also my first introduction to like, it was actually for what it was mental. It was like the first time I'd ever seen. Bill, how many people would you say at the Calgary show? Like 300 people. I've never seen at that age.
Those shows were big.
They were huge.
By our means, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It definitely wasn't like 5 or 10. Like
it was like you were playing at like some rec center or something, but it was huge to the point where like it had a second level that people could stand and overlook, and it was packed. And it was the first time I'd ever seen like 300-400 people all dogpiling on each other
to shout into the mic.
As like a 16-year-old, I was like so confused. I was like, oh, this is what you're supposed to, you know what I mean?
Someone ran into the middle and like set up a ladder and then jumped off the ladder into some
it was mental. I've never seen it. And for us it was like a huge like eye-opening like learning curve, where it was like we had just done this like 3.5 4 week, or I think it was maybe even 5 weeks of like a Western Canadian tour where we were playing to like 4, 5, 10 people, and then we go to this and we're just like, whoa, these guys have made it. It's so crazy.
Rock stars.
So but it definitely a really cool experience for being that age and being exposed to that type of music in those bands.
Bill, what's the iconic thing that you said to Michael's bass player Marshall when their little 16-year-old that they always joke about?
I told him to drop out of school and start smoking. That's what I did.
He's like,
you told me to do that too.
He's like, drop out of school and start smoking.
Yeah. You don't need school.
That's so
Words
funny.
of wisdom, so inspiring.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to that, guys. That was the first half of the Spiritbox Chronicles. This is a long as fuck one. It's like right now we're looking at it, it's almost 3 hours. So we're gonna cut this one in half. We're gonna do part 2 next week, which is the band really going into their process of Spiritbox and everything about that in Europe and a lot of crazy other stories. So we will see you next week for part 2, and thanks for listening.
Thanks. Bye.